Hello everyone, my name is Daniel. I'm going to walk you through the DEFCON 2019 unofficial digital forensics and incident response volatility memory capture the flag. That's quite a lot to start off with. This is provided to us by hecfblog.com. The link to download this memory image will be in the description of the video. I actually really liked this CTF. It was fairly straightforward, not overly complicated, and a really great way for people that aren't familiar with memory forensics or forensics in general to get a nice introduction to how forensics work and how memory forensics work. And give a pretty good introduction to using tools and volatility. So I really like this one. Really highly encourage it for everybody that wants to start practicing with volatility. So we're gonna walk through this. Um, Normally, what I would recommend whenever starting an investigation is to run a strings with the offset flag, so tac O set. Now, what that's going to do against the entire memory image, what that's going to do is that's going to allow you to then find malware hidden in processes. If you know the string of the malware or you know the string of something else that you want to find, you can then find the process that's creating that string. I did this in my practice run before recording this video. It took about an hour and a half to do and resulted in a 500 megabyte file. So we're not going to actually do that because it's not necessary for this capture the flag. However, there is one instance where we will need to do strings against something, so we'll do that later. Anyways, this is a 5 gig memory image, and so there are some. It's going to take a while to run some of these commands because it's got to churn through 5 gigs worth of memory. So thanks to the power of editing, I will be cutting out portions of this are uh, as we're running these commands. What I will, however, make sure to show is I'm going to make sure that I show you the commands being run, the flags, and give you my thoughts and my reasoning as to why we're running these specific commands in this way. Hopefully you can take that and sort of understand how to use volatility and or use volatility yourself and apply it to investigating malware. Now the first question for this capture the flag is get your volatility on. What is the SHA-1 hash of the memory file? And so to do that, we're going to run a very basic SHA-1 sum and then the memory file and enter, and it's going to run. Now this is running on Windows Subsurface for Windows Subsystem for Linux, Ubuntu, on my Windows 10 machine, and I have installed volatility on this as well. Um, I'm not doing this in a VM because with a 5 gig memory image, it's going to take some resources to work through, and my VMs are relatively slow. So I'm doing this on the bare metal machine. I don't generally recommend doing memory analysis on a bare metal machine because there could be malware and stuff inside of the memory image that you might have to extract, and you wouldn't want that to get on your system. With this image, I know for a fact that there isn't malware in here. There is a fairly basic interpreter shell in here, but there's not malware that is a risk, which is why I'm running this on my Windows 10 machine. Now, we've got the results back of that SHA-1 hash, and the answer is right there. That is our flag for this question. The next question is, what is the profile, or what profile is most appropriate for this machine? So we're going to run, volatility's got a plugin to do this. So if we do sudo vol.py, tac F to specify the file, the memory file, and then we type image info. Oops, gotta enter my sudo password. I gotta enter my sudo password correctly. There we go. So volatility's got a plugin that will check the KDBG of the memory file and will give you a suggested profile. This is going to take a little while to run, so I'm actually going to do the first cut here, and we'll resume when it returns with results. Now this should look pretty seamless to you. It should happen fairly automatically. So We'll be back once we've got some results. All right, so about 5 minutes later, and we have now returned with information about the image. In this information dump, we'll see suggested profiles. Now, for versions of Windows prior to 10, so 8.1 and lower, volatility is pretty good at guessing the suggested profile. And so this first profile is probably accurate. Spoiler alert, it is accurate. But with Windows 10, Microsoft changed how the KDBG works, and with each update to Windows, it gets messed up. So Windows 10 gets kind of funky with this. With Windows 7, it should be fairly all right. So we're going to run sudo vol.py. However, we are going to test that, and that's what we're doing right now. We're going to set the memory image, and then we're going to do tac profile equals, and then this win7sp1 x64. And then we're going to do just a quick command to test this to make sure that the profile that we have is correct. If that profile is correct, then this command should work and not have any unusual characters or odd characters, anything like that. And it did. So we can reasonably assume that this is, in fact, the correct profile that we need. Now, the next thing I would normally say is that once you've determined the profile for the image that you want to work on, you want to set the variables so that you don't have to keep typing in tacf, the image, tac profile. On regular Ubuntu, this works fine. And on the SIFT workstation, this works fine. For whatever reason, it doesn't seem to work on Windows Subsystem for Linux. So instead, what I'm going to do is assign an alias for this. And so what this alias is going to do is it's going to make it that whenever I hit the letter V and type that, that will now run this command followed up by whatever I want. So if I now do vpslist, it's going to run volatility with that specific image and that profile and run the command. So the next question is, hey, write this down. What's the process ID of notepad.exe? Well, we just ran pslist, so we can easily look through here and find notepad.exe. But if there are a lot of processes running on this system, that might be a little bit more difficult. So what I generally recommend doing is when you're running commands and volatility, because sometimes these can take a while to run, which we'll see later when we run some of the much bigger commands, is to run the command and then tee it off into a text file. Now what this will do is this will output the information to standard output, so it'll appear on your screen, as well as also write that output to a text file. So now we have pslist in here, which is a text file that has our process. So provided that we didn't just spot notepad.exe with our eyeball, right now what we could do is we could do a grep, do taci for case insensitive, notepad, and then the file we just created. And boom, there we go, notepad.exe. And then this first one here is going to be the PID. The second one is going to be the parent PID. So the service or the process that spawned notepad.exe is going to be this, and this is going to be the process ID of notepad.exe. So our answer to question number 3 is going to be 3032 as our flag. The next question on this list is, WScript can has children. Name the child process of WScript. Well, we can again, since we just did this PS list, we can again scroll up and look for it. No, there's WScript, and here's WScript's process ID. Well, now we would need to find any other process in this list that has this process ID as its parent PID. We see one right here, but are there more? Well, let's take a look. So if we had a larger list, we would then do WScript here, PS list. Okay, we found the process ID, tab up on that, or just arrow up on that, and then put in the process ID for that. And look, now we have 2. We've got the process itself, as well as the other process that has that listed as its parent PID. So our answer to question number 4 of name the child process of WScript is going to be right here. It's going to be this executable right there. The next question on the list is TCP/IP settings. What was the IP address of the machine at the time that the RAM was dumped? Well, to do this, we need to look at essentially a netstat. Well, so what we're going to do is we're going to hit V, and we're going to do netscan. And this is going to, oh, whoops, I just said t that out into a file, and we're going to let this run. And what we're going to look for here is we're going to look for local IP address, and we're going to look for that connecting out to stuff over ephemeral ports or high ports. The reason for this is because it's very unusual for a server to be running a high port, and so if our local IP is connecting out over a high port, that means it's most likely the system itself connecting out. So we're going to look for that. This is going to take a moment to run, and so I'm going to pause again here and resume once the results of this are back. All right, so the output has come back, and we can start looking through and looking for these local IP addresses with ephemeral high ports. So here's a local IP with ephemeral. Here's another local IP not ephemeral. Here's 2 more local IPs, also not ephemeral. Here's another one, also not ephemeral. Here's some more with ephemerals. Um, I'm looking for ephemerals specifically because it's easiest. However, you could also correlate this IP with the owner process. So SVC host is generating a connection using this IP. SVC host being a legitimate Windows process means this is probably our local IP. In fact, it is our local IP. And so we would mark that as our flag. One interesting thing is right here, and we'll get to this in a minute. We have our local IP connecting over ephemeral high port to another IP over port 4444 with this random executable spawned by WScript. Now, just off the top of my head, I know that 4444 is the default meterpreter port. So my spidey senses would be tingling right now if I was investigating seeing something connect to 4444, because that generally means that it's meterpreter. Also seeing that happen, that connection to 4444 with a randomly named executable like this, something seems fishy. However, not our question. So our question is, what is our local IP? And that's the IP address of the machine at the time of the connection. Now, I'm actually jumping down questions because I think the questions are out of order. Because the next question actually says, based on the answer regarding the infected PID, can you determine what the IP address of the attacker was? Well, we haven't actually had a question about an infected PID before, but if we scroll down to question 16 on this, it says, what's a Metasploit? This box was exploited and is running Meterpreter. What PID was infected? And so I just mentioned that, very likely this 4444 connection, where'd it go? This 4444 connection is probably a Meterpreter session, which means that this would be its PID and this would be the executable file that is doing it. Now, we could, in fact, dump this if we wanted to. We're not going to. So the PID, though, is this. 3496 is the actual PID. Scrolling back up now to our actual question. That is, so that was question 16, and now we're back to question 6. Based on the answer regarding the infected PID, can you determine what the IP address of the attacker was? Well, the IP address of the attacker would then be here, 101.0.0.106, because that is generally, because we have a random ephemeral port connecting out to the Meterpreter handler port, which means that this is probably the server that is used to handle the Meterpreter sessions, which means this is probably our attacker. So that would be our answer, would be 10.0.0 104.106. The next question, I heart Windows dependencies. What process is running VC runtime 104.dll associated with? Well, we again have a way to, Volatility has a plugin for DLLs. It is DLL list. If you ever, for some reason, aren't sure what plugins you have that you could work with, you can run volatility tech h. Again, we've aliased this, and look up, and you can find DLL list, print list of loaded DLLs for each process, or DLL dump DLLs from the process address space. So for this, we're going to use DLL list because we want to see all of our DLLs. And so, whoops, my bad. That, I forgot to do T there. So we're going to pipe all this out to a file so that we can search through it a little bit easier. Now, here we go. All right, this is going to take a while, as I mentioned, because it's printing every DLL for every process on the system. So I'm going to go ahead and pause here, and I will resume when this is done. All right, so we're done now. So the question was specifically one very specific DLL. So again, taking out trusty grep, we're going to search for VC runtime 140.dll. And we want to see what process we want to see what process it's associated with. So there we go. We now have the we now have the processes that have this DLL. And we're going to look for something a little bit odd, right? So we've got root Office 16, Office 16, Office 16, click to run. What is this click to run process? Why do we have this? This seems very strange to me. So this is going to be our flag here. Is this going to be this click to run process? It's very, very bizarre. And if we wanted to, we could then take this and link it back to a PID, but we don't need to do that because it's just the process that we're actually looking for here. So we've now identified that there's potentially malware on the system. That was that file from apologies, that file spawned by WScript. Now the next question is, Mal, where are you? What is the MD5 hash of the potential malware found on the system? So in order to do this, what we need to do is we need to dump the file. So we're going to run our volatility plugin, and we're going to do proc dump, and we're going to do, well, first we got to go back and find the PID. So let's grep, and we found it earlier. Let's just scroll up, hit up on a couple of ours. Okay, so there we go. We've got the PID of it now. This is the executable we're looking for. Here's the PID that we're looking for. So we're going to do proc dump, and then the PID, and the PID for that is 3496, and then tac dump dir. We're going to select the directory that we're in with a dot, and we're going to run that, and we're going to let this write out that file. So what this is going to do is it's going to carve that executable out into a file right here. So if we take a look at this file, we have an executable that's 72 kilobytes large. So we do our MD5 sum executable and hit enter, and now we have the MD5 hash of the file because we have carved that file out of memory. The next question is, I'm gonna get Bob's hash. What is the LM hash of Bob's account? Well, if any of you have ever used Meterpreter, one of the easiest things that you probably do all the time is you run hash dump. What hash dump does is it checks the passwords on the system and it dumps them out in a hash form for you. Well, volatility actually has the same thing. And so it's going to just dump the same cache and give you the file, or sorry, give you the hashes for the accounts. It's going to take a moment to run, so we're going to go ahead and pause and resume in a minute. Okay, so we now have the hash dump of the file, and what we have here is this first part right here is going to be the LM hash, and the second part here, is going to be the NT hash for the system. So the LM hash is going to be this this section starting with AA that you are looking for and ending with EE. That is going to be the flag for this question. The next question is VAD the impaler. What protections does the VAD node at and then a memory offset have? Well, VAD's an interesting topic, and we're not going to get into it very much. All you really need to know is, again, if you run volatility help, you will see that there is a VAD info plugin right here. VAD info dumps the VAD info. Now, this command is going to take a long time. So we're going to write that out into a text file, and we are going to wait because this is going to take a what? Oh, might help if I type VAD info. There we go. This is going to take a while, and we're going to. Oh, it's going to take a little bit. I'm going to leave the. Oh, there we go. As you can see, it's going. I'll show you what this looks like in a minute once we're done running all of this. All right, so we are back now, and this is what the VAD output looks like. We have VAD node at a memory location, start memory location, end memory location, tag VAD, and then protection, which is what we're looking for. So what we can do is, because I wrote that over to a file, we can grep, type in the memory sequence that we're looking for. That's 5Fs, A800, 577, BA10, and then our VAD info. And we noticed from looking at this that we need to look for 3 lines after this. So we're going to do attack A and then 3 to say 3 lines after. And boom, there we go. There is the memory offset that we're looking for. And here is the VAD protection that we're looking for, page underscore read only. Now the next question is, more VADs. What protections did the VAD starting at 2 more memory offsets have? Well, we're going to follow the same thing. Since we already wrote this out to a text file, we might as well just replace this with the next offset that we need. So this offset is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, I'm looking at this off my screen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 7, or there. 3, 3, C, 1, 2, 3, 4. And, oh, we've now got multiple ones. Well, what we're looking for is one that ends with DFFF. So right here, DFFF, protection, page, no access. This is why we grep things out, or this is why we write things to text files, because we don't want to run through that 10 minutes of VAD running again just so we can find one new thing. We write it to a text file, we can then just grep through that text file whenever we want. The next question is Vacation Bible School. There is a VBS script running on this machine. What was the name of the script? Well, VBSs are going to run in command line, and so what we need to do is we need to run our command line command. So V command line, and then T that over to command line, and run that, and we're going to let that go. And then after that, we're going to search for a .vbs. As this is going, we're going to, oh, that's done now. Sometimes these will go faster than what I was expecting. When I tested this out, they went slower on some of these. So, and there we go. We now have our VBS script. So here we go, and we have the name of the VBS script for the flag. I will also provide the link to actually submit this. You can still register for this and submit it. Test your knowledge in the actual DEFCON Digital Forensics Challenge. You just won't get the credit for doing this. So the next question is, thanks Microsoft, an application was run at and a time code. What is the name of that process or that program? Well, one way that we can check to see when processes have run, if processes have run, is to check the Shim cache of the system. The Shim cache is going to show any time that a process has touched the file system and been executed. So we're going to run our Shim cache, and we're going to pipe this over into a Shim cache as well, and let that go. I will resume when this is done, because and I've said this with the last couple of them as well, if I remember correctly, this is going to take a little bit. Okay, the results of our Shim cache are now completed, and we are going to look for a very specific time code for each one of these as well. So again, back to our trusty grep, because grep is fantastic. And that should be enough to find that. And we now have Skype.exe. So we now know that the application, the Microsoft application that was run at this specific time code was Skype.exe. The next question, light bulb moment. What was written in Notepad.exe at the time of the memory dump? Now this is where I mentioned we're going to need to do strings. So if you're like me and you don't have a great memory, you might not remember what the process of Notepad.exe was. And so we're going to search through a list that, okay, we now have the process ID again. So now we're going to, instead of how earlier we did a proc dump to actually dump the process into an executable file, this time we're going to do a memory dump to scrape the virtual memory of this process into its own smaller memory dump so that we can run strings against it. So we're going to do v as our alias, right? And then we're going to do memdump, the process number, so 3032, tac dumpdir, and a dot for this directory, and we're going to let that dump out the memory of this process, notepad.exe. Once we've dumped the memory of the process into a virtual dump, we're then going to strings it, and we are going to search through those strings for our flag. Now, I'm going to pause here while this is dumping the memory. Okay, so the memory image has now dumped out, and if we check the size of this memory image, we can see that it is about 500 megabytes. So when I said that strings was going to take a long time against this, what I really mean is strings is going to take a long time against this specific memory image of the virtual memory in Notepad. Now, what I didn't realize when I did this originally is how Notepad stores its text. Notepad actually stores its text as 16-bit little endane. And so when we're doing a strings command, oops, when we're doing strings, we need to do endane little for this against our dump file, and we're going to tee this out into Notepad strings. And the reason why we have to do it this way is because if we don't do it this way, we're actually going to miss the flag. So I've tested this a few times, and if we don't run it with this tac EL switch on here, it's going to not work. We're going to encode it with 16 bits. So we're going to wait. We're going to wait for this to finish. This is going to take a while because we have quite a lot of strings, and I'll be back. Okay, so that's now done. And we're going to now look at the size of that file that we created. 19 megabytes, not terrible. However, we've got a lot of data stored in here, way more data than I really want to scroll through. And the reason why we're doing this is because, well, it's a lot of data, right? We don't want to scroll through all of this. So what we're going to do is we're going to instead grep. And this is going to be a little bit of intuitive thinking. So if you go to the DEFCON Digital Forensics CTF page, and you look at how they want you to submit each one of these flags, they want you to submit them as flag with the open caret. And so chances are, if they're going to try and identify something in here as the actual flag, because there's all of this text that we would be scrolling through, they're probably going to um, identify it with this flag command. And so that's where my thought was with this. And so if we search for that through here, we now have a couple things. We have flag the K, flag the K, flag the, flag Red Bull is life. The actual answer for this is going to be Red Bull is life. And that was just a little bit of like intuitive thinking to get to that. The next question, question 15, what is the short name of the file at file record 50 or 59045? So short names are referring to short paths for files. You'll see what this looks like in a moment, but basically it's just a way to shorten it on the system so that it's not written out fully. What we need to do to identify this is, well, we're talking about file records, so we need to pull up the master file table. So if we do our vol and we do our mtf parser, and then we tee that over into a file. Oh, sorry, not mtf, mft parser, and we tee that over into a master file table, and we let that run. What? Oh, gosh dang it. T, mft, there we go. That's better. It is going to run, and it's going to start writing out all of the records from the master file table, uh, and then put them into a text file. From there, we'll then need to identify or grep again for the record number that we've identified, 59045, and some lines after that to try and find the short name. We'll be back when this is done running because it's going to take a little while for that as well. So hang on. All right, so that took a little bit of time to run, and we're looking for the record at, um, or the short path for the file at record 59045. Now, again, we could scroll through all of this, but instead, what we can do is we can count and see record number, and then 1 line, 2 line, 3 line, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We'll just do like 15, right? And this is what a short record actually looks like. We're looking for these. So let's take a look at grep I, tag A like 15, our record number of 59045, and then this we call the MFT, and that's interesting. Okay, so we got a little bit of interesting stuff there, but what we did get is we got our record number, and then we got the short name of it, which is employ parentheses 1 dot XLS. If we actually bring this out to, like, let's say 20, you can see that that is the short path for employee information dot XLS. So this is what we're actually looking for here, and this is going to be the answer to your flag. So that concludes question 15. We already did question 16 earlier. That's what's a metasploit. This box was exploited in running interpreter. What PID was infected. Uh, on the actual digital forensics page, that question is actually question 16, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense when earlier it says, well, we had an answer regarding the infected PID. Can you determine what the IP address of the attacker was? When we hadn't actually found an infected PID yet. So that actually concludes this memory forensics challenge. Like I said, I actually greatly enjoyed this challenge. I thought it was pretty good. And I hope you guys found this interesting and enjoyable. And I hope this gave you a little bit of insight into volatility and how volatility works, as well as some of the things you can use volatility for. So if you're ever needing to use volatility to investigate uh, an incident, you can use it a little bit more successfully. So thanks for watching, and goodbye.